Hello, students. Simple inheritance, which is actually on task 2, is something which you have been using all along. You just don't realize it. When we're looking at the code for a normal program that you've started, you have something here which normally a lot of you leave as Form 1, but I've renamed in his case to Form INH for Inheritance Demo. And you'll notice it has a colon behind it and then the word form. Form in this particular case is the C# library for Windows components, which in this case includes the form. If you were to look on a form and then you look at the toolbox, it has all of these components that you can drag to the form. So before you can do any kind of form, you actually have to inherit those particular items in order to do a Windows form application. So you inherit from that immediately. And that is a simple inheritance example that you've already been using. And this particular item that is in front of the colon, we refer to as our part of the thing, and in code, we see it referred to with the word this. It indicates that it's in our class, public class, form inheritance demo here. And the portion that is behind the colon is referred to as base. That is, this is from which form inheritance demo is inheriting various different properties, methods, anything that it exists in the base is also brought forward into this portion of the program. And it's a considerable amount of things when you're inheriting from form, because form is a library component that brings in all of those components and everything so that you can use them. Now, a lot of code is hidden. The first thing that you see after you declare a class is usually the constructor. You'll notice this name is the same as this name, and the reason for that is that it is the constructor. The constructor in a class, a constructor is code that you want run immediately whenever this class is called and instantiated. Now, when we say instantiated, we mean we're creating a new instance, a copy, if you will, of the class for use within the program. And in the constructor, we want certain code run immediately when that happens. Now, you can have more than one constructor. You can have a constructor that has zero things being passed in, or more than one thing passed in. We'll talk about that in later weeks. The initialized component item that is stored in the constructor is the complete description of everything that is on the form. And if you could see that, you would see that there is quite a bit of code that is as part of that. In the main project, when you have this, you don't see that because it is part of the code and it is separated into another file so that you don't have to be concerned with that. When you create your own classes, the code can be contained within your class, or it can be separated out into another file. that's not really something that's all that important. But I will show you what happens when you go and you look at initialize component, and then you'll see how much code is generated for you just by adding a component to the to a given form. Now this string that we have here is to demonstrate something later on, so we'll ignore it. I have two buttons on the form, so I have button display and button display 2 for the two buttons that are going to demonstrate the two classes that I've added. Now I've already added them over here, but just so you can see, I right-click on the project name, and then I say add class, and then you can see there's class. I put a name on it here, and then I add. I'm going to go ahead and add this one just long enough so you can see how it comes up over here. And you can see there's class 1, and I can rename it at that particular point, or whatever name that I gave it, it will come up as. I'm going to go ahead and delete that one so that we don't get confused. Now the first one that I did for our example here is choice1.cs, and let's show the code for that. True code. Oh, it's already up there. Okay. And it looks a little bit more intimidating simply because of the fact that there's a little bit more to it. But the first thing I want to point out is that choice 1 is inheriting from form inheritance demo. Okay, it's not inheriting from form, it's inheriting from form inheritance demo. So it inherits everything that was already on the form. So our form looked like this. And so when we ultimately design additional things for the form, okay, so I added things to the form, and it looks like this. Okay, so this dotted line represents a panel of things. I put in a panel first so that I could add things to the panel, and then when I'm done, so that when I click done, it will get rid of the panel, and that means it gets rid of everything on the panel. We'll talk about that in a minute. So the code here, you see that I've inherited from the initial form, which in turn inherited from the form library. There are several variables here which are part of the components which I added to the classes thing. I added these to the form. So all of these variables that you see here are those things, and now that was automatically generated. I did not type these in. They were automatically generated, so don't concern yourself with those. Don't concern yourself with this string. It's part of a demonstration later. I did put this in. This is a thing which returns the panel information simply as a get, and the reason for that is that back in form, when I allocate this, this is where I instantiate choice 1, and this is choice 1, and this is the variable c1 equals new choice 1, and then it calls the constructor. The constructor does initialize component, and then it comes up to this, which says this controls add c1.rpanel. Okay, I call it rpanel here. It doesn't make any difference what it's called particularly, but the point is this rpanel exists in choice 1. You can see it here. and it is the variable which gets passed back to here. So when I say c1.rPanel, it picks up the panel that I created in choice 1 and then adds it to our current form here, which looks like this. If I were to not add that, it wouldn't show. It wouldn't be usable. Okay, so, and I used a get without the set so that I can send the information out, but nothing can get in and change the settings on the panel. I could have just made the panel public right here, but doing so allows it to be accidentally accessible, and that way something could damage it while somebody was programming it. Doing it this way means that nothing can change the panel settings unless it is programmed specifically in this class. Now this class again is choice 1, and right here you see choice 1, and then you see initialize component. This initializes the components for this class and only this class. It is automatically called when I say choice 1, C1 equals new choice 1. It takes a copy of all of that you see here. No, not here. Well, that too, but everything that you see here, it makes a copy of it and it sends it and makes a new variable with that information. Okay, so here is initialize component. This is where we call initialize component. But in our other program, all you see is the call. You don't see what initialize component actually does. I'm going to expand this out, but I don't want you to have your mind explode over it. You don't have to do anything with this at all. Nothing. I just want to show you what it is. As you can see, there's a lot of code here, and that code is generated for every little thing that you put on in the designer. Anything that you put onto the panel in this case, or when you're talking about forms, anything that you put on in the forms. Now I'm going to close this back up, and I want you to forget that. Now, but that's what initialize component does. Now, everything that we have on the current choice 1 design, you'll see I have 3 radio buttons, a text box, and the done button. Let me run this just to show you preliminarily what that does. So when I click this button, I get my panel, which has my 3 radio buttons. Whenever I click one of the radio buttons, it puts a text in there corresponding to what's up there with the radio button. So choice 2, choice 3, okay, nothing special about that. When I click done, it takes all of that away. Okay, so again, in here, nothing really special. Whenever I click a particular radio button, it puts that particular choice into the text box. Nothing special about it. Each one of them, depending upon which one I check, that's the choice that it puts into the text box. The done button says panel choices, that's the name of the panel, dot dispose. That means that it gets rid of the panel. And when it gets rid of the panel, then as you saw, I have the panel up. When I click done, it gets rid of the panel, which means it gets rid of all of that stuff. And again, choice 1 inherits from form inheritance demo, which was our original project item, and form inheritance demo inherits from form, which is the library from C# that gives us the components that we can put on the form.